Welcome to Engage Your Tribe, a podcast about the art and science of audience engagement. I'm Jeremy Shearer, and my guest is James Stanton, VP of Marketing at Empyrean. James, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's great to be here.
So Engage Your Tribe is brought to you by Tribal Knowledge Podcasting. We are a full-service B2B podcasting agency, and we help brands use podcasting as an efficient way to have authentic conversations with the people you need to get to know to grow your business. And you can learn more at tribknowledge.com. Okay, James, now back to you. Let's hear a little bit about your background as a marketer and about Empyrean.
You got it. So I've been in the marketing world for quite some time. Came in without telling you my entire resume here, but I came into marketing first on the agency side, working in New York City at a brand agency. And then I joined an information company called Gartner, worked there for a number of years, worked for another company in a similar vein called 451 Research, before, and a couple other experiences before moving out of the information world, and then into the HR tech and benefits and wellness and healthcare space, which is where I'm at today. And the company I work for, Empyrean, plays a key role in the space. We have a solution for managing your benefit administration and your entire benefit and wellness journey, which in today's world is pretty important for the companies that care about their employees and are looking to have their employees feel supported and live their best lives. We can help make that happen. So yeah, it's a great space to be in, and I get to lead an awesome marketing team here.
Excellent. Very cool. Now, you're also a musician, right? I know people are going to wonder because they can see your guitar right there in the background. So you're a musician, a songwriter, right?
Indeed. Yes. Perhaps it's not my day job, unfortunately. But yeah, no, I've played music my whole life, and I'm a singer songwriter, and yeah. So I like to keep that. You can also see my lute over here, which I don't
lute?
put that
Wow.
one quite as often.
Okay. Yeah. A lute, that's like a medieval instrument, right?
Yes, it is. And I on occasion I will prance about with my lute.
I can picture you like in the Lord of the Rings type of situation, sort of on a
You have to
mountaintop with
prance.
your lute.
Yes, you have to prance with the lute. There's no other way to play it.
Well, you must prance, right? So that's awesome. Okay. So now you've been at Empyrean for a little more than a year.
Yep.
And when we spoke a little bit before, you told me that when you started out, one of your main tasks was helping the company discover its central value proposition, its
Yep.
why, so to
Yep.
speak. So how have you gone about, first of all, how have you gone about kind of getting internal buy-in on the need to do that?
Yeah. So, internal buy-in is critical to, and if you're doing anything to touch, right, the company core, the why or the central brand proposition or strategy, the worst thing in the world is if, marketing comes marching in and kind of drops something, right? It will never work. It's not authentic. The company has bought in. So, for me and the way that I approach things of this magnitude is to have internal buy-in, really just comes through being a part of the process, right? And it's not just at the end like, hey, look at what we figured out, like, don't you like it? It's starting with stakeholders from across the company, learning from them along the way, which especially, right, as a newcomer to the organization, I didn't know everything. My team didn't know everything, but what we wanted to run as a process, they could be super inclusive. So again, that was kind of, core to getting internal buy-in and core to the need to do it, right? I think you asked as to kind of,
Yeah.
why do we need to create a why?
Yeah.
It was a pretty obvious, that I think everyone was able to buy into the fact of why we needed to do it, because we're in a very bloody ocean.
Mhm.
The competitive set, we all do have a very similar solution that we bring to market. And we were all talking about the great tech and the great service that we have. And realized I like to do these things called a what do I call it? Attention triangle. Gotta have a fancy name for things in marketing. But all I do with this tension triangle is I plot right at each one of the they're not corners in a triangle, they're points. Each one of the points, a core value proposition that's kind of shared across us and our competitive set, and then plot everybody in there, right, with the way that they're going to
Mhm.
market and messaging. And that very quickly just showed everybody's clumped in, right, talking about
Mhm.
the same set of things. So using that again with the groups as we're starting to create groundswell for creating our new why, having that externally validated, that's also another great way to get internal buy-in, is to have some of our key clients and the influencers and channel partners in our space all look at that too and say, yep, that's how we see you and your competitors. That gave kind of, rise and need for the project.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me how finding the why, it doesn't just kind of magically happen. Like you need to make it happen. And like most companies start with a product or a service and founded by the people who created it from scratch or like from the ground up, right? And they're just so deep into that that it can be hard to kind of pull back, right? And see like, okay, what's like the intrinsic value here? Like
Yep.
we know that our product is awesome and it can do X, Y, and Z and A, B, and C. But on like the, I don't know, call it like the more philosophical level almost, like what's the intrinsic value that people really deep down care about in the human way, right? And I really think that's where marketing comes in and really can take that step back and be like, let's broaden our scope here. Let's explore that dimension.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. And it is there's a little bit of marketing magic maybe that goes on there, but I think it you nailed it, and it's creating an emotional connection for your brand with the audience that you're trying to connect to, right? And it's so easy, and I see it happen so many times, right, where companies focus on how they do things or what they do, right? Which are all super important, right? You need to
Yeah.
be able to talk about like, yeah, here's how we go about delivering our, great solution. We've got all of, these people and we've got this platform and here's what we do. We can do this. We could like, those are all like not saying that it's not important to talk about that and to have that at the tip of your tongue. But creating that, the why, or a central brand proposition, however you want to think about it. And I do like Simon Sinek and the way he talks about the why, the how, the
Yep.
what. And so I ascribe to that a bit. But getting to that emotional connection of the why, that's just it's the wellspring. It's where you start. You don't have to spend 2 hours discussing your brand belief and your why with a customer. But if they see that, say, you know what, that's kind of how I feel too. That gets me going a bit. That
Yeah.
opens the doors. Then the emotional, language welcomes you in, and you can then connect with all the how and what we do way more easily.
Yeah, and I think the key word there is feel. You said, "Oh, that's how I feel about it too," which is, you're talking about emotions, which you've mentioned a couple of times. And as we all know, when it comes to actually making a buying decision, emotion plays a large role. It's not the only thing, but it plays a very large role, and you have to be able to tap into that in
Yep.
order to get anyone to part with their hard-earned money.
For sure. And in the B2B world, and in the space that we're in, when someone when our clients, who are HR and benefit leaders, when they make a decision to work with our platform, it is a multi-year commitment. And it's likely it's a multi-month commitment to just get it started, right? Whether you're
Yeah. Hmm.
coming to us from a different competitor, or you've been doing it on your own. um, there's just a ton of emotional investment that comes behind that decision, because we're spending so much time together, right? And
Yeah.
systems are so critical. We're talking about, whether your benefits for, if something traumatic happens to you, right, are going to be there for you. And that, payroll deduction has worked and your evidence of insurability has gone through so that if you're, in the doctor's office with a kid with a broken arm, it's all good. And that, backwash to the company being like, "Whew, I'm glad my company had my back. Glad that I was able to get this
Mhm.
taken care of. I've got dollars in my HSA account." Like, so there again, when you think about all the emotion, especially in our world of in benefits, that to me was one of the driving reasons why, yeah, our brand, our core why, it had to be emotional. It had to be out there. It couldn't just be about what we do.
Yeah, for sure. So what is the why? How do you articulate that? Like in a, the elevator pitch, what is Empyrean's why?
Yeah. So glad you asked. uh, so our why could be summed up as building culture through benefits. And for us, what that points to, and what that expresses, really comes from the past several years of growing need by people, by us, by we humans, to have a stronger, safer, more secure, route to our existence. Right? If you think about
Mm,
that
mhm.
little thing called the pandemic, which I'm not quite sure where we sit with it at the moment. But
Yeah.
it's only accelerated, right? This need for people again to feel that they have got, someone's got their back, someone's helping hold them, someone's helping, secure and improve their, the way that they can live. And companies, over the past couple of years, especially since we're all, welcomed into everybody's living room or, their home, there's become a
Mhm.
much stronger connection between the employer and the employee, than there ever was before. I mean, I've heard stories, of CEOs now who are like, know the names of the dogs of the people 5 rungs down from them. Right. And
Yeah.
so there's just the kind of wall between, corporate, America and all that, and the work. It's just gotten, shredded, right, completely. And
Mhm.
so in the kind of midst of all of these big cultural, shifts and work strategy shifts, we believe here at Empyrean, that the role of benefits is just critical to how a company needs to think about their culture, right? And because their employees, the employees are judging them on it no matter what, right? And it's gone beyond just, do you have a 401k, right? It's, hey, that
Mhm.
pet, right? And that pet you just met, right? I want my fur baby to have pet insurance, right? Are you going to help me out, right? With that, right? So we
Mhm.
see this year a huge surge, like double-digit surge on pet insurance, right? Being
Wow.
adopted,
Okay.
for instance. So again, we the our brand why, right, of building culture through benefits is all about helping employers, to make that connection about what their benefits can do for their teams, and
Mm.
extend the power of their brand into the daily life of their employees, and again, really just focus on that connection. That's what we're trying to kind of
Mhm.
emotionally connect to. And then our platform is what make, and I won't go into all the details of what our
Sure.
platform does, obviously, but we have the ability technically to kind of pull that off to make that happen.
Yeah. So it sounds like when you drill all the way down, it's the why is kind of tapping into just the very basic and deep human desire for safety, security, well-being,
Yep.
knowing that you're not totally exposed and vulnerable, like that, those kind of really basic human needs.
Yep, for sure. And there are so many interesting benefits that are out there, today is what you hear a lot, obviously, about mental health, for the past couple of
Yeah.
years, as we've all been going through a lot. That has played, become very, very top of mind. But there's so many other interesting benefits that are out there that companies, are really trying to string together. I mean, things from student loan refinancing and getting preferred rates, right, to alleviate some of that financial burden. Others even like Shopify, like going out and, especially in the middle of the pandemic, right? If you didn't want to go do your own shopping, or I think companies can offer that as a benefit. What's another interesting one? Gratify is a kind of an interesting one where it's a benefit of providing advice and guidance for college admissions, right? To folks that may not have access to a college. Like, so there's just so many different ones that you can, as a company, you can think about what are our core values, what is important to our
Yeah,
culture. And one of the ways that we can make that value tangible is through a benefit, right? That
yeah,
those are the kind of conversations and things that we're thinking about, as well as, of course, core health and well-being will always be, a central and a very important benefit.
for sure. Now, so your team, of course, is responsible for, among many other things, articulating that why through the content you produce and so on, and enabling sales to have those discussions. And when we spoke earlier, you mentioned that you approach creating content like a product manager approaches building a product. So, first of all, what does that mean? And what's an example of how that works, what it looks like in practice?
Yeah, sure. So, I mentioned as I was talking about my experience that after my agency days, I went into product roles. I went into a company, Gartner, who many of you might be familiar with.
Hmm.
And I was part of the product team there. It was a really fun time. We brought a whole new side of Gartner's business selling to high tech providers yeah, to life. And so I spent several years learning about how to create information products, right? That's what Gartner does, right? And
Hmm.
those information products, right, are sold for dollars of subscriptions and, seats and all of that. And those kind of, those lessons that I learned about, information and exchange, valuable information in exchange for dollars, right? Is what I've taken forward as I moved into corporate marketing roles. And, funny, the first corporate marketing role that I had at Gartner, the CEO asked me, he said, "Hey, you've done such a great job, with products. Can you take that same approach and build a marketing webinar program?" Right. And I was like,
Hmm.
okay. And we ended up building a program with 3 webinars every week in 2 to 3 different time zones, and a whole process behind subscribing to that. But the takeaway and that I brought forward is that people aren't paying with dollars; they're paying with their own information, right? And I take
Hmm.
that as very valuable, right? For we marketers, right? I mean, information, knowing about people, what they're interested in, what who they are, where they live, who they were, all that stuff, right? That's our gold, right? That's what we can work with
Hmm.
to then, do our job of creating pipeline and all of that. So as I bring content programs to life, I always, keep that in mind, and make real investments, right? If you're going to create content that's going to be of high value, that just doesn't, that's not just a random tweet here or there. You have to invest in the people and the time and the resources to do it. Right. And, we're in the midst of a big study right now ourselves on, looking at the future of, benefit leaders. And we're interviewing over 100 folks to get that done. We're partnering with an analyst firm, Nelson Hall, to do that. Right. So a lot of craft and care comes into that. So at the end of the day, when that thought leadership is stood up, and whether it's, a report they want to download or an interactive experience that allows them to, learn certain things while we learn certain things about them, all of that, it is of high value. Um, and the last
Hmm.
point, while I'm on, I suppose I have the mic here. One thing I always like to think about too for content and a product, oriented mindset, is to really think about your content differently. You've got thought leadership content, which is everything that I just talked about, right? Then there is an absolute time and a place for, solution and capability and product content, right? Things about us, why we're great, problems we solve, things we do. Um, I always make it a very much of a known strategy on the marketing teams that I get to be a part of, that those two need to be different, right? I have a very large bee in my bonnet about white papers that end up, you read a couple of paragraphs and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, I'm just being sold to, right? It's now
Hmm.
this is a fluffy white paper product marketing piece. that in my mind is an absolute no go in marketing from my perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. It's so disappointing when that happens, right? You've like downloaded the paper and you're like, oh, cool. I get to learn this thing I wanted to learn about. And it's just a sales pitch.
Yep.
And it's, I mean, I'm not going to go back to that company for
Nope.
information or, probably not work with them. It's just like leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
It does. And there's times when you want that information, make it accessible.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, you don't, and I usually don't put, wouldn't put that even behind, any kind of gate. Right. But you need to have that available. So I'm not discounting, that needs to be created. It needs to be great. It could certainly use, some thought leadership bullet points in it. Right. Oh, we heard, the reason we created this is in response to this, industry trend. And here's the 5 things it does well. But the title of that paper is an industry trend, right? It's the feature or the function that you're explaining.
Okay, James. So to wrap up, what would be your main takeaway for marketing teams that are kind of more at the beginning of that journey of searching for their why? What are the most important first steps to take?
Well, it's a great question. And I think we talked a little bit about it earlier, and that I think that, takeaway number 1 is getting a buy-in across the organization that you work at, that we don't have a good why today and why that's hurting us. Right. And you need to build your case. And I can tell you that, sometimes that could be a little uncomfortable and you have to have conviction. Right. So as a marketer, you need to feel very strongly, right, and know that this is important for us at this stage and at this juncture of who we are as a company. Right. And the good news, as I mentioned earlier about Simon Sinek, right, and for those of you who haven't looked at him yet, there is a ton of really good information that's out there that can help you to articulate the need. And then, once you've got that buy-in, go. Don't give up. Don't sit back, right? Keep the momentum moving, keep people engaged, show iterations, right? Don't wait and do big reveals, right? Little steps are even more impactful, because then everybody inside, starts to see their voice, being, heard and also expressed. Because no brand, no why is going to be successful if the only thing that you do is create a great new website, but the rest of the company doesn't feel emotionally connected to what you're putting out there. So I guess those would be a couple key takeaways.
Okay, excellent. So much good stuff there. Well, James, thank you. Thanks a ton for your time and for a really engaging conversation.
My pleasure, Jeremy. It was a blast.